Today on X-Play, we examine how it started and how it's going with Nintendo mobile games. Plus, we put on our overalls and crank up the Walker Hayes tunes as we review Farming Simulator 22. Sweet! It's game time.
Hello, and welcome to X-Play.
Nintendo is famously protective of their IP. I once watched a cosplayer get trank darted at a Tokyo game show for wearing a Luigi costume that was the wrong shade of green.
That's horrible.
It was, but Sessler totally deserved it. I tried to warn him.
Which is why it was so surprising when Nintendo began releasing games for mobile devices that didn't start with Nintendo and end with some form of DS.
Super Mario Run was followed by a growing list of mobile titles from Pikmin, Mario Kart, Animal Crossing, and Fire Emblem.
Check out our discussion about how it started and how it's going.
Heat check. How would you rate Nintendo's mobile games so far? What would you say is the strongest offering? Are you guys big mobile players?
I do play a lot of mobile games, but I'm not gonna lie, I've not played any of these Nintendo mobile games, and mainly because they haven't interested me. I've kept my eye on them, but like, I don't know, Super Mario Run is just, isn't that like an endless runner?
It's not really endless in the way that there is an end, but they take all of the levels and chop them up into endless mode where you go from screen to screen from several levels. I'm curious to hear your take, Sessler, just because it's so contentious and like whether they're good or bad, and I'm always curious to what your viewpoint is on mobile games.
I think the biggest issue that Nintendo has and many other video game licenses have is that the minute I'm looking at a game that I know how to interface with on a Nintendo console, I'm suddenly going to realize that what I'm doing is less than that. And that's like one of the biggest challenges, I think, for people who are well versed in gameplay vernacular, that they know that they're getting less. It's the light version.
Coming from a League of Legends and Riot Games background, I've dabbled in mobile games. I personally like playing on my phone, but I also lived in China where, you know, when you talk to mobile games to a Western market, they don't get it and they don't like it and they don't play them. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that there haven't been a lot of breakout hits because in China, a lot of the consumer base can either buy a phone or they can buy a computer. And it's pretty rare to have both. We tend to really only look through things and have the discussion through a very westernized lens, which is, why would I play a game on my phone? That's dumb, that's boring, and like, I totally get it, but frankly, some things aren't about you. Sorry, guys.
When you think of opportunities to be playing mobile games, I immediately think, for Nintendo specifically, I think about Dragalia Lost, right? I've been to Japan several times, and every time I was there, advertisements for that game were all over the place because it was one of their core approaches to mobile that worked out very well for them over in Japan. And I think like over here in the States, aside from my anime friends that are really obsessed with it, I didn't really hear all that much about it. So I think you're right, Frosk, in that I don't think mobile gaming is as it's big financially, right? It's big for the numbers, it's big for everyone in the industry. But no one really talks about it.
And I think that it won't really bridge the gap where it becomes a big thing in a Western market when you start combining giant enterprises that don't normally work together.
This has been attempted on I don't know how many occasions, but how that you know, if there's a big game called like a Starfield or something like that, some way that you can maintain a substantive and meaningful engagement with the game when it's not at home. But the core of it, the root of it, the trunk, I think needs to be, something that people are more accustomed to be playing on their PC or on their console.
I think that's what's gonna help shift the culture. Being able to see a game like Pokemon Unite, which is a full console level game, and then you have crossplay. It's like, yo, I really love this on my Switch. Well, let me download this on my phone. Oh, wow, this really isn't that bad. And I think it's not gonna happen overnight, but if they really do push that cross-play stuff, I think that's where we're gonna start to see the cultural shift in the next 5 years.
I think there's one thing that we sometimes lose track of is, I'm not the biggest fan of the term, but gamers, we're all gamers. And that has certain, things that it implies. And we, on the whole, tend to play a lot of mobile games. That does not mean that mobile games are not being played even in the West. they're being played enough that like they make a lot of money. And that, you know, one thing I do know about my travails in the world of startup is that the only gaming space that actually, you know, was getting investment was mobile. You know, you don't actually have to lay out as much cash to make the game. You can make the game faster, and the possibility of return. If you're a hit, you're just you know, doing Scrooge McDuck stuff with the cash that's coming in. And I know people that play Clash of Clans, and that's the only game they play. But you know, the two cultures just don't intersect, and I think for that reason. But there is a group of people that didn't sort of have our interactive upbringing, for lack of a better word, who don't see that paywall as anything kind of onerous or questionable, because that's all they've ever, you know, their gaming experience has always had something like that in place.
To kind of go off of that, Adam, I think the thing that I really just want for the future of mobile games, especially when it comes to Nintendo specifically, is just give me a complete product, give me a version that's done, give me a version that doesn't require more money than the money that I put down. There can be a world where, yes, people do get that option of, here's the money, here's the gotcha, here's the freemium, put it in. And there can be a world where I pay $20 for a complete experience.
I think there's an interesting discussion about kind of where room is made in terms of budgeting for games to make money, for people to avoid crunch, and for people to get paid what they're worth. And I think mobile games is kind of like the microcosm of a lot of these problems kind of built into one that keeps games afloat. I'm a huge Pokemon Unite player, and I'm sure you guys are so tired of hearing that, but Pokemon Unite as a mobile game has a really bad reputation because it caps about how much you can grind a week to unlock everything. Like, technically, everything is unlockable in the game, but it would take you, I think someone did the math, like 5 or 7 weeks to unlock everything, because even if you were to play 24/7, at some point the game says, no, even if you continue playing, we're not going to reward you. But then at the same time, like, while I'm here being like, well, that's, you know, that's BS. Why can't I get this? Why do you force me to pay money? Also, at the same time, like, it's a free-to-play game. I really much enjoy it. Do I want to pay $5 to unlock this Pokemon? I like understand the rage, but at the same time, I try to like logically talk myself out of it. Like, okay, I'm an adult. Like, some people don't have all of the time to grind, and maybe it is a nice experience to throw $40 into a game and be able to compete with the person who is no-lifing, sweaty hands 24/7 on a game. And I think that's also kind of a demographic that we'll talk about. Like, I'm not saying that there's one right or the other. I understand where frustration comes from, but also at the same time, I'm like, but do you need to have all of the color combinations? And because that isn't available, does it really make the game any less awesome? Like Halo Infinite, everyone's pissed off about the Battle Pass, but I'm like, yeah, it's a shitty thing to do, but it's also just still a great game. And just because its Battle Pass system sucks, does it make Halo Infinite's multiplayer any less valuable? And I say, no. I wish the Battle Pass was better, but it doesn't make Halo Infinite for me a terrible game.
I agree 1,000%.
I'm sorry. I was raging about it.
There. I'm going to become the new Citizen Kane meme if it's going to happen.
Nintendo has a lot of nostalgia for all of us, but let's be honest. They make games for babies. Real gamers crave real-world accurate tractor simulations and challenging livestock resource management mechanics. Come back right after the break for our review of Farming Simulator 22. You babies.
Five breadsticks for my triple treat. 3 layers deep, 10 Cinnabon mini rolls to eat, and the pizza plus another pizza.
The triple treat box, only from Pizza Hut.
At SteelSeries, we make the headsets, mice and keyboards that the world's best gamers win the most with. And we've been doing it since way back. It's up to you how far you go, but whatever you do, go for glory.
What's the recipe for surprising the kids, treating yourself, and ditching dish duty? You're looking at it. Order your Pizza Hut faves like Original Pan, Original Stuffed Crust, and more at pizzahut.com. No one out-pizzas the Hut.
She moved to New York to follow a dream.
Welcome to the Empire State.
And then she's a victim of a violent murder.
New York detectives have seen it all.
You want to give that family justice?
And only we can take you to the scene of the crime.
The person who did this murder was very familiar with the Opera House.
It takes a city of dreams to create these nightmares.
It was a world-famous pizzeria.
Does this have something to do with the mafia?
New York Homicide, a new series, premieres Saturday, January 1st, only on Oxygen True Crime.
Welcome back to X-Play. Have you ever fantasized about being a farmer?
Can't say that I have, Gerard.
Well, apparently lots of gamers do, the Black Hokage. And a disturbing amount of them are in fact European.
Farming Simulator 22 is the latest installment in the top agriculture management video game franchise.
Esports have become an ever-present entity in the gaming world. Millions of dollars in prize money, countless sponsors, blood, sweat, and tears put into mastering each game. But there's a hot new game that's sweeping the esports arena, a game that's challenging, competitive, and cutthroat. And yes, I'm talking about Farming Simulator. It's true. It's out and more competitive than ever. Gamers all over the world are competing to see which team can cultivate the most wheat after 15 minutes. And this may seem dull and unexciting, but you're absolutely wrong. It captures the thrill of jumping over rising drawbridges, making the competing team's hay conveyor belt overheat, and even the simple joy of stealing your competitor's tractor. Now that we know how the professionals play Farming Simulator 22, what's in it for me? Developed by Giant Software, Farming Simulator 22 is the latest installment of exactly what it sounds like, an impeccably detailed agricultural simulator. Do you like Harvest Moon? Well, how would you like to play Harvest Moon on hard mode? As an experienced hardcore Animal Crossing lover, wait, that didn't come out right. As an experienced softcore Animal Crossing lover, no, wait, that's not it either. As someone who animals, I expect to be able to hop into Farming Simulator 22 and just play. How hard could a farming simulation game really be? I'm watering some plants and driving a truck. I mean, I'm queer. This is what I was born for. Surely I could handle another little farming simulation game, right? Oh, how wrong I was. Farming Simulator 22 has a built-in tutorial on the easiest difficulty of the career mode. You start your agricultural career at Elm Creek, a small-town American-inspired farming community with 3 tractors and baby's first wheat field. Once you're done with a surprisingly robust character creator, the game holds your hand through mounting vehicles, attaching trailers, and hiring AI workers. Unfortunately, like a teenager being kicked out of the house after graduation, there is absolutely no guidance after this point. And if you've never played a farming simulator game before, and let's be honest, that's most of us, very little is intuitive. When you're ready to move on to greener pastures, you can choose from 2 other maps, Haute-Bailleron, a picturesque landscape inspired by the French countryside, and Erlegrand, a map inspired by the Swiss Alps that's mostly set up to encourage cattle farming. Goddamn Swiss. Every map is detailed and beautifully rendered. Are the graphics going to knock you back on your overall wearing butt? Probably not, but they're still pretty dang good and filled with a lot of lovingly rendered detail? Absolutely. In many ways, Farming Simulator is only what you make of it. Your basic tasks are to run a farm, cultivate crops, and sell your goods, then do it all over again next growing season, and the next, and the next. But because it is what you make of it, it also means that it's on you to, well, make it. You set your own schedule, you assign your own tasks, and you better believe you have to figure out how to ride a harvester all on your own too. The official Farming Simulator 22 website offers some tutorials, and after 3 hours of additional YouTube guides and 1 hour of studying a tractor manual, I was finally able to do what I came to this game to do, poorly farm some hay. Farming Simulator combines a driving sim with a resource management game. The gameplay mainly focuses on the business aspect of agriculture, from selling harvested crops and materials, to buying land and equipment, to tending to crops and livestock. The main objective is to simply avoid going into debt by making efficient sales and slowly expanding your farming empire. Jealous of the neighboring CAFO that parks 40,000 densely stacked hogs along your property line? No problem. Outside of growing crops, you can also care for livestock, ranging from cows and pigs to dogs and bees. And there are some pretty robust mechanics in place for caring for animals. You can sell their byproducts and even use their waste as fertilizer for your very own crops. Or in my case, you can simply buy a bunch of horses, ride them around in a continuous circle to level them up, and then sell them back at 4 times the price. Eat your heart out, Black Beauty. And if you're more of a giver than a grower, cultivating someone else's farm is totally an option by taking on contracts. You can simply go into the menu and see what your neighbors need help with. You can either use your own equipment or rent theirs for a small fee. And with Farming Simulator 22, you can even take on multiple jobs at once. Thank you, capitalism. Farming Simulator 22 offers a few big changes from the last games. One major update is the addition of seasons and seasonal crops. This was a mechanic modders had been using for years, but Giant Software finally made it an official feature. Seasons allow for both an aesthetic change as you play, but also growth and cultivation cycles with your crops. Most crops are best planted in spring to then be harvested in the fall. Come winter, you can use greenhouses to continue to grow, or if you want to enjoy the tropical shirt to pumpkin spice pipeline of watching the seasons change without all the hassle of your corn dying in the winter, you can simply deactivate seasonal growth cycles and harvest your crops year-round, just like we do in real life with factory farming. Another big change is the option to hire automated workers to help you run your farm. These workers can till your fields, care for your animals, or even just move equipment from one side of town to another, all at a price, of course. This allows you the option to multitask. If you wanted to have a worker harvest a field while you run the raw materials to the silo, you can do that now. Another big change is the addition of production chains. Think of these as the Farming Simulator 22 equivalent of Stardew Valley's wine barrels. Let's say you grow a field of wheat. Now, instead of just selling the raw material, you can purchase a factory that can turn that wheat into flour. And from there, you can invest in another factory that can then turn that flour and other products and crops you've cultivated into bread that you can sell to make that bread. See what I did there? Like bread, as in money, bread to make bread. They get it. The beauty and difficulty of Farming Simulator 22 is that the goal is whatever you make it. When you first load into the game, the digital world is your digital oyster. Every single thing in Farming Simulator 22 has a manual process, like literally everything. For example, let's examine sheep farming step by step. First things first, you need land for the stock pen. Once you've taken out a loan and bought the plot and pen, it's time to get some sheep. Wait, you think you can just order them online and have them delivered to your door like some kind of farmer's Amazon? No, you need to buy an animal hauler to load and haul your new cuddly back to the farm. Okay, so now your sheep are on your farm. Time to shear them and live off your wool riches, right? As if, bitch. These are temperamental and needy creatures who for some reason need things like food and water to produce. So, before you harvest their wool and overtake H&M, you need to buy a water tank. $9,000. And one water tank later, your sheep are happy, right? Wrong. You still need to fill up that water tank. What was the $9,000 for? I have no idea. It comes empty, and for whatever reason, your little digital farmer doesn't own a hose. And don't even get me started on getting grass for them to eat. The entire game is like this, and I'd like to remind you, once again, that the tutorials and mechanisms in-game explain very little of this process to you. You will have to figure all this out on your own, which can certainly lead to a pretty tedious and frustrating experience at times. But once you push past the confusion and tutorials and mountains of sheep shit, Farming Simulator becomes incredibly rewarding because you've been forced to cultivate your crop at every single stage. It only makes you appreciate it that much more. Seeing your grapes turn into raisins to be put into people's cereal is amazing, even if people who eat raisins in their cereal are food perverts. At the end of the day, Farming Simulator 22 isn't going to be for everyone. It's tedious, it's obtuse, and it certainly doesn't hold your hand. But if you are willing to put in the work and copious amounts of research, the reward is a really meditative and rewarding experience. Maybe only better by an excited community and active dev support. And if you are someone who is coming to the game with some experience with past Farming Simulator titles, I am sure you will be pleased with the quality of life changes, updated graphics, and the same agricultural experience you know and love. And that is why I am giving Farming Simulator 22 a 4 out of 5.
Hey Gerard, did you know Farming Simulator is famously dependable and is rarely, if ever, delayed?
Nothing would surprise me about this franchise at this point.
There's also a robust esports scene that features tractors launching off ramps.
I stand corrected. Come back after the break to learn things you didn't realize you needed to know about Farming Simulator. Who is playing these games?
Frosk.
TH, the elixir.
Elixir? I brought Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper is the elixir.
Thanks for joining the Payne Motors quarterly earnings call. And now I'll turn you over to our new CEO.
The numbers last quarter were rough. Mea culpa. Well, not mea culpa, actually. Thea culpa. Let's sell the crap out of this car.
It looks like the car was assembled by a spider on LSD who also had bad taste.
It tested well.
American Auto premieres January 4th on NBC, and watch 2 episodes now on Peacock.
Welcome back to X-Play.
We here on the show strive to have an open mind.
Like if Farming Simulator is actually the greatest esport ever created.
Check out our in-depth discussion.
It's time for esports, baby. But if I'm gonna talk about esports, I'm not gonna do it alone. So I've invited not only Corey, but I also think Sessler is here. Sess?
I think. I have no clue.
I'm here for farming esports.
The producers thought it would be funny to get these facial expressions exactly as I explain Farming Simulator esports to you because it's a very real thing and it is taken very seriously.
Break it down for us, Frost.
Basically, the developers of Farming Simulator 22 are a company called Giant Software, and they had a booming multiplayer mode. And kind of just like what happened with Defense of the Ancients, Dota 2, that was born from Warcraft, the same thing kind of happened with Farming Simulator. Basically, modders came out, they adjusted things, they made logging simulators, they made racing type of games, and Giants recognized what the community was doing, how crazy the multiplayer and passionate the multiplayer community was, and so they decided to host a tournament and make a mode that's 3v3, and it just blew up in popularity. And now it's played cross-country, mostly in Sweden and Germany, primarily the European countries, which is why North America has that exact face when you tell them about Farming Simulator esports.
Is it just like one guy is chopping the hay with the combine and
how do you
someone
win?
else?
That's what I was gonna ask. How do you win?
Yeah.
So the game mode and the multiplayer is you're working together to farm bales of wheat. So there's 5 different zones and it's 3v3. And what's even better is they have a pick ban phase similar to other traditional esports like League of Legends, where you ban certain models of tractor and only one tractor model can be played at one time.
I was gonna ask that. So like there are certain stats on like tractor models that have like nitros on them and you can't use them.
There's no like twisted metal like nitros, like you're just flying a tractor, but they do handle differently, they go a little bit faster, and most importantly, some of them have front loads and some of them don't. And that's important because one of the positions that they play is called a sticker. And it has like a forklift basically on a tractor, and the job of the sticker is to drive their little pegs into bales of wheat, pick them up and put them on a conveyor belt. So after you're done with your pick and ban phase and you know what tractor you're driving, then you go into like the spawn phase where everyone has like they start at like a finish line, and then you can tractor rush, which is an actual tactical strategy. You race your tractors out of the start like you're in Crash Bandicoot Racing to where harvesters and balers
are loaded up in the next zone. So you race your tractors. Some people stay in their tractors to connect to the baler. Some people jump into the harvester. You can try to steal the harvester from the other team. So if you have really fast tractors, that's why they call it a tractor rush. Because if you get into all of the harvesters and the other team doesn't have one, they can't harvest hay, and you just automatically win. It's kind of a cheese strategy.
I love your enthusiasm and all this.
It's wild. You race to the zone to get into the harvester. Then you drive to what's called the field zone, and it's literally exactly as it sounds like. It's just a giant field, and you can drive the harvester, and then you start creating the wheat. But the wheat needs to be turned into bales, which is why the balers are important, but they're little tractor hookups that you can pull around and put them at specific strategic points. And so you have one person who's harvesting the wheat. Then you have one person who's gathering up the wheat, putting it in the bales. Then you have one person who's then taking the rectangular, you would call them hay bales, but they're wheat bales, and driving them across drawbridges that go up and down, and you can control them going up and down for both teams, and they create ramps. So they can either stop you from getting to the scoring spot if the drawbridges are up, or if it's just about to come up and you think you can make it, you are launching your tractor with all of your hay bales, trying to keep them on top of you to get into a conveyor belt to score. And the team that has the most scored wheat bales at the end of 15 minutes wins.
Like, what do you, is it like winner, winner, gluten dinner? What? I am so confused.
You win a trophy and a bunch of money, Adam. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
You put the hay bales in the conveyor belt, it counts it up. They have scores like 500 to 600, so you're scoring a lot of wheat.
No benefit concert with Willie Nelson.
No. You have to think of it less like a farming simulator esport and more like a Rocket League, because it's basically a vehicle-based esport, but instead of moving the soccer ball around like you would do in Rocket League, it's just bales of hay, but it has more technical and strategic depth because there's different zones and you have a different strategy for how you're playing out every zone.
I'm never gonna play this, but I appreciate this this explanation of it all. You've opened my mind to like a whole, like, you know those memes where like all the symbols are floating. I'm like, wow, this is a thing. Like, shout out to the community.
Serious question.
Yeah, serious answer.
Would the same game format work without kind of the curiosity of the farming conceit?
Of the
I mean, it
farming
sounds
what?
like almost like some old arcade games, like or even something like Papers, Please. Like it just kind of gets hard. Yeah, I mean, is there a gameplay mechanic here that works outside of farming? Or does it require the farming to actually pull it off?
Well, they did create like logging mods and things, so like the mechanics. Because you have to think about it, it's basically like Daisy in a sense, where you've created a.
It's unfinished?
Like, no, that's good though. I call it the psychopath simulator. It's basically like a physics engine. It's a sandbox world that they've programmed specific mechanics into, like driving all of these vehicles, and the vehicles all handle differently. And then they have the physics mod of we can put things onto this vehicle. When you play Farming Simulator, you got to get a little bit janky about how you're doing some things. Like your tractors don't always fit into certain buildings, so you want to make things as like efficient as possible. So you very quickly start figuring out like, can I hop over this fence to get from point A to point B faster? And from that, the modding community basically turned these things into race cars. So it has less to do with like the technical aspect of farming and much more to do with the technical and mechanical aspect of being able to balance an object on another object while you're perfectly guiding it around to score.
So on the competitive side of things, is there a game that they prefer? Kind of like in the 2K community, when we talk about the greatest 2K, a lot of times people say like 2K11, or if we're talking about like Smash Bros in the competitive
Like
scene,
if they prefer like Farming
they prefer
Sim
Melee
19 versus 22.
Yeah. So is there a specific game that they play competitively, or do they go on the annual release and they just kind of update?
I have no idea. I would imagine it's probably annual release, but I haven't checked into that. I know there's tractors that they prefer, and they seem very like. You see the same cars basically every single time, so they've definitely min-maxed there, but thankfully, you guys have survived this. I'm being told to my producer, you can let them off the hook, we're done with it, and that does it! I hope we all learned something, both about unusual games and esports, and also something about ourselves.
You know, Frost never answered my question about if I can get a government subsidy to review video games if I grow a tomato plant on my balcony.
That's it for this episode of X-Play. Don't worry, we don't always talk about farming stuff this much.
That's right. We ball it up all year long, then it explodes out of us like an engorged udder needing to be milked.
There's so much wrong with that sentence, so I'm just gonna say goodbye and thanks for watching.
Check out our extended review videos on our YouTube channel where you can milk more of our udders. Bye-bye.
Just gonna keep milking these jokes, huh?
Milk them away.